Good morning, guys. This is Nightwolf. Just kind of wanted to follow up and recreate one of the videos or portion of a previous video I did on the KP liberations. So about 3 years ago, I did a full-on stream of creating a liberation file, but unfortunately, the video quality at the time was subpar due to one, my internet and the computer I had at the time. Now I have a much better computer and a much better internet connection, so I'll be able to actually upload this. And this is actually a recording that I'm making rather than trying to stream it. So, pretty much the general concept of this is we're going to be looking at changing over the base class names or the base classes used for hostile forces, so the opposition force and the BLUFOR, and the civilians. I'm not really going to touch too much on the independent force because honestly, there's a little bit more to it than just changing out basic class names because it's broken down, and I'll probably make a smaller video detailing how to um, change those guys out and get those working correctly. Um, I also am going to apologize now. I am sick. I have been fighting a really nasty flu. Allergies are here, and I am also kind of fighting off a reoccurring strain of the corona. So I do apologize if my voice cracks, or I start coughing, or you just everything kind of goes silent for a little bit. So, um, but without further ado, let's get into this and change out these hostiles. So make sure that you have actually downloaded the KP Liberation. It doesn't matter what map. If you want to go with base Altus, Panthera, or whatever, the Liberation files are out there. You can go to the Bohemia Interactive's forums. Just go to Google, type in uh, Liberation Arma 3, and you want to look for the Google search item of MTP Liberation on the Bohemia forums for Arma 3. That's going to just kind of read through there. You'll be able to find the item where it shows all the pre-packed missions, and you choose which one. For today's showcase, I'm using kpliberation.altus. So what we're going to be doing is going through here and just kind of changing everything out. When you go through and you're wanting to start working on changing everything out, you're going to go through here and you need to make sure that's in the correct file path. Make sure it's in this PC documents Arma 3 other profiles. The profile name that you are using, I'm using my Star Wars captain's role, which for the Ninth Soul Corps. So it's going to show up with kind of some of this stuff. If you don't have the missions file, I highly recommend just launch up Arma in vanilla. You don't need to go and try to launch it with your mods or anything like that. Just launch without any mods on. Go into the editor, place down a singular unit on the map, and then hit save as, and then put whatever you want to call it. Just call it test or something. Save that mission file. Then come back here to your file browser, hit refresh. This mission file, you may not see it at first, but once you actually go into editor and you actually create a mission, quote unquote, this missions folder will then appear, and you'll be able to go right in and dump your mission PBO into here and your basic mission files. So without further ado, let's actually get into the KP Liberation itself. So once you actually get into the Liberation, you're looking at the mission files. The location that you're going to go to be able to find the class, forces you want to use for both BLUFOR, OPFOR, GREEN4, and Civilian will be in the folder called Presets. This presets is controlled by the KP Liberation config.sqf. You can be able to change it out any way you want. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what I call the custom SQF. So we're going to go in through here. It's broken down into the 4 various base classes of BLUFOR, Civilian, OPFOR, and Resistance. For having different hostiles to shoot at, we're going to go to OPFOR. You can see here we have a ton of different configurations that the KP Liberation community has already created. That includes having NATO as an opposition force. So But what we're going to be using is what's called custom.sqf. This is pretty much what I use for whenever I'm making my own liberations and everything like that. Just go to custom.sqf and boom, there you go. So I already have this loaded up. When you load it up and everything, you're not going to see this all these guys right here, all these different class names. These are all going to be, I don't want you moving. These are not going to be here. I did a little bit of prep to this, so I actually grabbed a couple of class names for different soldiers that I wanted, and got them over here set up so that way I can just copy and paste. I'm going to kind of show you a little bit of some of my tip and tricks on how I do things with liberation, so that way you guys have a better understanding of how it's done and make it as seamless as possible. Now, another thing I'm gonna really kind of hit on is proofread all your work and do this in chunks. You try to do an entire SQF file by yourself, you're going to screw it up in some capacity. Do not expect that the mission will just automatically work no matter what. If you screw up a quotation mark, a semicolon, or a comma, you're going to break the mission. I don't care how long you've been doing this. I make this mistake constantly, and it is irritating as hell. But I'm human. I make mistakes. So, while we're looking at here, we're going to be looking at this top file portion right here. So lines 9 through 26. This is defining the basic hostile forces we are going to be using at main objectives, secondary military objectives, factories, and military reinforcements. So these are pretty much your basic line infantry kind of guys. So and um, whenever you come against any hostiles that are attacking your base or anything like that, these are going to be the guys that are going to be coming to attack you. Um, these are going to be different from the town group of hostiles. Those guys are defined here in lines 43 to 55. More specifically, 46 to 54. What we're going to be doing is we're going to change these over, and I'm going to show you just the basics of how to find these class names and what we're going to do to change them over. So first things first is we're actually going to go into Arma. We're going to go in and we're going to find the basic guys that we want to use for our new hostile force. In the example I'm using today for you guys, I'm using the Spetsnaz. As you can see here, I already have a squad pretty much made up, which is just the basic combat patrol team. Come on, there we go. I also have a random VR entity here to replace the officer. So as you can see, each one of these guys is a little bit different in some capacity. We have marksmen, we have AR, we have ammo bearers, and we have a team leader. And then we got this random schmuck here. So when we look at these guys, I highly recommend if you're wanting to have a completely customized hostile force and you want to use, different vehicles from different portions of factions to kind of add a little bit to it, I highly recommend spawn it down, group it up in the various chunks. So you have all the infantry in one area. We have all of our soft vehicles, soft shell or wheeled vehicles over in one area. And when it comes to heavy vehicles like tanks, we have them in a separate area, kind of broken up. The other thing that I would recommend too is start small to go big. So if we were to spawn in a basic off-road truck, followed by a repair truck, then a fuel truck, these would be ascending in pretty much kind of property value in a way. Because otherwise, if you were to say use these tanks here and you had the T100 as the main battle tank, but every now and then we would use the T140 in Gata as the supreme tank. I would only use the T140 once or twice, and then the T100 as the main battle tank, because the T140 is more specialized, heavier punch than the T100. But that depends on the mods that you want to use and how you want to use them. The last item is the rotary and air wing. Just kind of again group these up in ascending order of specialty and or cost that you want to have. That will help you kind of organize your SQF so that way it's a little easier for you to read and it's not just all over the place, because how you build your SQF is going to be immediately reflected into the buy menu when you actually go to buy assets for your faction. So that's kind of how I kind of organize it myself. If that doesn't work for you and you just kind of just go with it, that's all you. That's your preference. Do it how it is. I'm just trying to suggest a way of possibly doing it that works for me. But again, I don't control you. You do you. So, going back to the infantry, I'm gonna get rid of these guys here. I'll leave this for basic off-road, so use that. So when looking at the infantry and just kind of figuring out what I want to use, so take our team leader here for instance. I want to switch him out for the basic hostile main force team leader in our SQF. So we're going to spawn him in, and this little black box will pop up and it says team leader, and then underneath that we'll have the O_R_patrol _soldier da 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 da. That is the class name. Wherever you see this these underscores and everything, that is going to be your class name that you want to try to snag. So and that's going to be for every single soldier that you wanted to use, and includes vehicles. You can see here the off-road. There's the title called off-road, and then underneath that is called the class name. So it'd be O_G off-road 01F. That's how you define that particular item. So again, I've kind of already grabbed all of these. I'm going to show you a really quick trick of mine that it's a bit obsessive, but I'm used to working off of one computer monitor, and I didn't like having to tab in and out of the game to go to Notepad to get everything to work correctly. Because 9 times out of 10, after trying to alt tab out of Arma and everything, it would cause the game to crash, and I'd have to relaunch it. And depending on the mods, it would take forever. So what I did to circumnavigate that is I actually physically wrote it. So I actually took notebooks and I wrote down every single class name. So here you can see the soldier class name. So the basic team leader is right here. So the O_R_patrol _soldier _star _F. Okay, what the hell is with the star? So when we look at our soldiers again, we'll kind of start noticing a pattern. They all have the same class name for the most part, except for that second to last little blurb before the F. You notice how it says soldier _TL_F, and then we'll go to sharpshooter, and it will say soldier .M_F and lat_F. So what I do to kind of help me write all this down, because when it comes to working on the Arsenal preset, it's horrible. I hate working on the Arsenal because of there are modders out there that really don't care how they write these class names, and they will have super long class names. To the modders who do that, I hate you. To the modders who make it very simple, like this, or even more simple than this, thank you, I love you. Oh my god, I love you. Because nothing more is more taxing is going through and trying to write down a class name that is over 30 characters long. I kid you not, there's one mod team, and I was actually working on a liberation, and I was talking to some of the different mod developers, and I came across a couple different class names. I'm like, what the hell is this? Why do you guys have it this long? They're like, oh, that was just, a, joke class name. We didn't think anyone would be ever use it, so we kind of just threw it in there. I'm like, okay, well, I hate you guys because the class name was over 50 characters long, and it was just a solid um, line of pretty much either capitalized or lowercase letters with no underscores or anything like that. It was just horribly written. So, um, definitely the class names are case specific, and you need to be very, very thorough when you write down all of these class names. So, but going back again, I apologize. I kind of ramble on, and that is a horrible feature of mine, but unfortunately, it is a feature of me. So, the star here is where I denote where I can locate the missing item of or missing classification here in the class name. So we'll see here we got the TL, our team leader, our marksman, light anti-tank, marksman class version 2, our grenadier, our engineer. Wherever this star is and the line is, that's what's going to be replacing that. So that way it's quick and easy. I can just copy and paste this basic line here and be able to replace it with the abbreviation that goes with it. I am so sorry. Now, really quick, you'll notice that the medic is different from the basic soldiers here. That is because the medic has a specific class name. He doesn't have the underscore F. So you're just going to have it where it's OR patrol soldier medic by itself. You're not going to put down the F. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Not going to work. Spawn in the correct unit. So make sure you're writing down these class names correctly, because if not, it's going to break. Um, but that's pretty much the general dynamic when it comes to writing, my trick on writing down these specific class names. So that way it's easy for me to do. I've written so many class names over the last couple of years of making liberations that I filled up 4 notebooks. I kid you not, 4 notebooks of class names for the arsenal, for OPFOR, for BLUFOR, for independent, for civilians. It's a lot of work. Be prepared to sit down and be working on this for at least an hour just to change out the basic soldiers before you start playing around with any of the other settings. So that's the general basic dynamic of working on that kind of trick. Going back into a notepad, we're going to actually start changing over these class names. So you can see here I've already gotten the class names that I want to use written down. And I'm going to go ahead and just copy and paste over here onto the left. This left-hand area is what's going to denote the hostiles and what kind of item that is. So, it's pretty simple. OPFOR team leader. Oh, that's my team leader. Okay, I need to put my team leader class name here and just kind of go through and update all of these to what I want. So give me a second while I transfer all these guys over and get them set up the way I want. Jeopardy theme song play in the background. Yeah, I don't want to get demonetized actually, so play it in your head. You should know how it sounds. If not, then I recommend going over to YouTube and just type in Jeopardy theme song, and you can play that overlay on this during this little piece. Now, a pet peeve of mine is when I change over these class names, it will force this column here, which is helping to show exactly what it is. It's pretty much the description of the item. I don't like how everything gets pushed over, so I usually just try to straighten it all out so it makes it, presentation presents itself a little better, so it's easier to read everything. But for this kind of example, I'm not going to spend time doing that. That's just kind of wasteful. So what we've done now is we actually have the basic infantry classes used for military and all that. That has already been described. That is all up here. We're going to go ahead and we're going to save. Now, something to note is when you go to a town, you're going to notice a different kind of unit that's going to be showing up. It's not going to be these guys here. If you go to a town, you're going to be looking at the militia infantry. That's a totally small other group of guys that you're going to be fighting against. If you want to have it where everyone is kind of similar in the same capacity of basic rifleman, again, I'm so sorry, guys. Basic rifleman and everything, you're just going to copy and paste them down here. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to take my rifleman here and grab him and just replace these guys down here. Now, the group of soldiers down here are the urban CSAT based soldiers. So they're going to be in the ugly gray blue urban getup. So, and I'll try to show you guys that once we get into game itself. So, pretty much that's generally it here in the basic infantry. Vehicles are going to be the same kind of basic concept. Find the vehicles you want. You know, change out the HMG Ifrit for a off-road with a Ma Deuce on the back of it, or the M2 Browning heavy machine gun. Put that as the new, OPFOR basic vehicle. So they're broken down into various different classes. I highly recommend don't try to change the number of items because they could potentially break in any capacity. Just change them out per line with what you want. Um, Down here, we have what is the basic transport. These ones have to have the capacity to be able to carry at least 8 soldiers. That is not including the driver. I always count the driver as its separate item. I want to have at least another 8 slots after that. So that way you can be able to control and hold everyone. Um, And then down here, you have the aircraft that are going to be in flight and both rotary and fixed wing. So, um, the other item here as well, you're going to notice these quotations with the commas. These are very important. Um, Lines 46 through 54 is what's being read by the configuration file. Excuse me. About what's going to be used to spawn at these different locations. The very, very, very last soldier you're going to use is going to have it where it's just quotations. There's not going to be a comma there. If you put a comma there, it's going to throw an error and it's not going to load because it's expecting that after line 54 and on line 55 is going to be another class name that it should be reading. But instead, it's getting a closed bracket with semicolon telling it, no, it's actually closed. So it causes a conflict of interest, so to speak. So it's going to prevent the mission from loading correctly. So um, definitely proofread all the time. Try to do this in chunks. Doing it in chunks is way easier, makes it a lot more affordable in time management and how to set this all up. So double check and make sure you save it, and we're going to go back into game. I'm going to leave these guys here. Normally, I don't like having these guys here with the vehicle because then it's just a random squad out in the middle of nowhere. They could break the mission in some capacity, but usually not. But I like cleaning up after my messes, and once I get class names all figured out. So double check everything. I like double checking everything in multiplayer because it gives me parameters and and I usually delete the player entity and just make all entities playable because otherwise it's not going to allow the mission to load correctly. I'm sorry, allow other players to join. So as you can see here, we have a config error showing up. However, this is just a basic config error that has nothing to do with us. There's another component of the mission that's not loading correctly for whatever reading or for whatever reason and is not being read properly. So we're going to ignore it. It's still going to load the mission. How you can tell is because this cutscene kicks in. If the mission does not load correctly, you're just going to be sitting in the middle of an island, unable to do anything. You're not going to have a scroll wheel option. You're not going to have this cutscene. You're going to be without any equipment on the middle of an island or wherever your spawnable entities are. Join the fight, hit deploy, and wait for this deployment cinematic to go all the way through. My group and I, we don't like this, the cinematic, so we usually disable it. So, but for this instance, I just want to kind of make it simple. And we don't have any guys showing up. What is that? Oh, there's an Ifrit. So there are guys here. Oh, okay, now it's starting to spawn in. There it goes. There they are. Alright, so here you go, guys. Now you can see that the Spetsnaz guys are now finally spawned in. Just for some reason took them a hot second. They have overridden the hostile main force being used here to deploy at the this military checkpoint. I'm gonna check Ferris. I don't think really I'm close enough for hostiles to start spawning here, but you never know. Yeah, it doesn't look like they're showing up. So, but we can see definitely here that the Spetsnaz soldiers are actually showing up correctly, like they should be. Um, so that is a mission accomplished in my book. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go back out. We're gonna go back to the basic editor itself, and pretty much at this point you can probably clean up all these guys, just kind of delete them, and boom, gone. So going back to Notepad. So when it comes time for working on NATO, it's very almost carbon copy of the opposition force in how you're going to deal with the um, class names, locating them and everything. However, things a little bit more different in that you have to have a fob type. That's an actual building and it's going to be spawned whenever you deploy a fob. I highly recommend just make this a building, a small building of some type, like a cargo house, or leave it as the basic HQ building and it spawns. The fob box type, make that like a basic storage crate of some type of shipping container or something like that. The truck that deploys it, everything here is pretty much already defined here on the right hand side, pretty much explaining everything. Some key notes here that you want to make sure you focus on is make sure you have a air vehicle building. This is what's going to be used to actually be able to spawn in and increase your rotary wing and your fixed wing assets. You cannot have any air type vehicle spawned in unless you have this air vehicle building, which is defined by the radar system building. That's the small white dome one. Pretty much think of it as an air traffic control tower. The helicopter's landing pad here, landing pad square, is what's going to increase the global rotary wing cap, while the tent hangar, that ugly green one, is what's going to be used to increase the global fixed wing cap. Supply crates, ammo, and fuel crates. I highly recommend just kind of leave them as is. I don't care what era you're in. The liberation files are set up pretty much all around how these things already are, including how they fit in the supply matrix of when you go to store supplies and everything. Leave them as is. That way you're not going to get this horrible like clipping issue or things floating. Just leave those as is. That way it makes it kind of pretty. Because presentation is always important. Now for the big thing when it comes to unit, actual BLUFOR unit and vehicles, these are going to be different in because we have to now buy these items and we need to set up how much they cost. So we're going to be looking at, for an example here, the IFV-6A Cheetah. That's the anti-aircraft uh, armored personnel carrier kind of vehicle. So we're going to take the class name, which is the BAPC tracked 1AAF. We're going to put it in there, but we have now some numerical data right behind that. So 300, 150, 150. So these are the various costs that it takes to build this item. And you can see how that's defined here, where it says it costs 300 supply, 150 ammunition, and 150 fuel to be able to build this. So that's 300, 150, 150. The first column is always going to be supply. The second column is going to be always ammunition, and the last column is going to be always fuel. So try to be conservative with how you're going to change this data, so that way it's, you're not making it completely cheating. But I mean, if you want to do that, I guess you could just zero everything out and everything's for free, or you can make it even more expensive. So that way, if you want to base your liberation on just solely infantry, you can make it where these things cost like 600 supply, 400 ammunition, and 300 fuel to be able to buy a single vehicle. But hey, that's your preference. I'm not going to control you. Um, so with soldiers, they're going to be defined here in the infantry units. Each one of them, again, has their description here on the far right, and then their class names here on the left. These guys primarily only require supply to build, but if you wanted to, yeah, again, you can add in a ammunition cost. I mean, look at the snipers. They actually require a ammunition cost of 5 ammunition for every item built, or every unit built. I wouldn't necessarily put it on the snipers. I would have actually put it on the actual missile specialists, like the anti-tank or the anti-aircraft, because that's more of a specialized unit that requires specialized ammunition to be able to use. Light vehicles. So these are pretty much basically defined as your wheeled vehicles, or your quad bikes, your off-road, your supply trucks. These are where you're going to be able to put those guys. You could also put your excuse me. You can also put the boats here. They're defined here at the very, very bottom, but you can honestly throw them anywhere in this file, or this blurb right here. You can throw them anywhere if you wanted to, but the boats kind of go at the very bottom in my perspective, because they're technically their own specialization. Um, and the boats, when you change those over, you have to actually go to a config file, and I'll show you that here in a moment. So that way you can actually spawn them on the water, because otherwise they won't spawn. So, um, again, be very mindful of your quotation marks and your commas. If you forget or delete a comma, it's going to break your mission. Heavy vehicles. These are defined as any vehicle that has pretty much uses tracks as its main basis for movement. So a main battle tank like an M1A1 Abrams would be defined as a heavy vehicle, or an M113 armored personnel carrier would also be defined here. Pretty much think of it, if it's got tracks, it's a heavy vehicle. If it's got wheels, it's a light vehicle. Um, Air vehicles, again, they're defined as their own special class, so you would put them all here. Anything that can fly, that should be self-explanatory. Oh, hey, this is a drone. Where should I put it? Okay, does it have wheels? No. Does it fly? Yes. Okay, we're going to put it over here in the air vehicle section. Again, air vehicles are a little bit more costly because they have a little bit more to them, but again, you change the class costs or unit costs per your preferences. Static vehicles are right down here. These guys here, pretty much they're static. They don't move. They don't have the ability to move because they're supposed to be in a specific spot, and they're going to stay in that specific spot, like a heavy machine gun, putting up a modus on a set of sandbags, defending a portion of your wall from the enemy forces. That would be a static emplacement, and you would put the class name of that static item right here. Now, when it comes to buildings, I leave these nice and free because this is mostly decorative items, um, and your fortifications. If you wanted to, you can actually make these require a cost of supply or ammunition or fuel if you wanted to. But for how my guys and I play, we leave it as free because we sometimes usually have difficulty actually being able to buy stuff because people are really bad about not keeping their items safe and letting them get destroyed quickly. So, um, yeah, so definitely be mindful. Um, Really quick note, you'll see that there's two items here, right here. These are helipads. These do not increase your helicopter capacity. They're strictly aesthetic. So if you think spawning these will instantly grant you more rotary, wrong. These are just decoration. They will not do anything to increase your ability to have more helicopters in the mission. So, but if you have like decorative items, more like sci-fi buildings for Mass Effect, you can throw these here. Star Wars, throw them in here. Optray, throw them in here. Buildings and decorative items only. Support vehicles. These are pretty much kind of like the more support items. Like you can spawn in your own personal art, specific base arsenal. Uh, the storage tarps that you use to actually store the various types of supply will be used defined here. The helicopter building, the planes, medical supplies if you have ACE turned on, and the basic supply vehicles would be defined here as an item. Squads are predefined here. Again, I highly recommend don't try to increase the number of units per squad. Leave them as is and just change them one line at a time. But they're defined. You have multiple styles. You have a light infantry squad, heavy infantry, anti-tank specialists, anti-air specialists. You have a force reconnaissance squad, and you have paratroopers. I wouldn't add more than what's already here. Again, my group and we don't use AI. We usually try to have as many players on as possible because otherwise, the AI can be kind of stupid. At the very bottom here are the rewards or quote unquote elite vehicles. I put down here all the vehicles that can be unlocked at military objectives that you have to actually get captured. So say the Ferris Outpost. That is a military point that has to be captured. They're going to be signified by that little red diamond, and then right above that is another marker that's like a circle with a check mark in it with another name behind it. So like the UCAV Sentinel. So if it's red, that means that item is non-purchasable in the BLUFOR build menu. So you have to actually go out there and capture it, and which will unlock that particular item. So for purchase in the build menu. So that's pretty much the general concept of the BLUFOR class names and vehicle build menu kind of stuff. If you want a little bit more specifics on it, do let me know down in the comments below. I'll try to answer it the best of my ability. That goes for with the opposition force. So we're going to take a quick look at the civilians. These guys are super simple. You just get the class name and the various civilians that you want spawned in. You throw them up here. So these are all the quote-unquote infantry guys. So the singular units will go here. And this is where all the vehicles would go. I like to do is I like mix and matching with all the vanilla assets. I'll add in all of the Tanoan civilians. I'll add in all of the Contact DLC civilians in here, and that includes all their vehicles. So if you want vehicles in here that are going to be civilian based and civilians only, then you can throw them in here completely if you wanted to. The last item we're going to be kind of looking at, I'm just going to kind of touch on this a little bit, is the resistance. This one is going to require me to create a small video just by itself because of the amount of work that kind of goes in with this. But the general concept is I would leave this alone. what you're going to be doing to change out is up here is the basic soldier class names, which I recommend just leave it as is. It's an independent force. Leave them as the base independent force unless you're using like the Optre Spartans or the There Is Only War mod Space Marines. If anything requires a specific bone structure of characters, you're gonna have to you have to put that physically in here because when you try to use the uniforms for that particular class, so like the Spartan 4 armor and everything, if you try throwing it on a regular soldier, it's going to look horrible. These guys are going to be running around naked, and there's going to be the armor underneath them T-posing like a fool. So when it comes time for those type of items, you would throw them in here. But again, if you're just doing a basic liberation where it's, you know, U.S. Marines versus Pakistani militia, and you want the militia as an independent force slash resistance, um, just leave it as is. You just change out their uniforms and vests and, you know, headgear down here. So, um, and vehicles, same thing as all the other ones. Just grab the class name, add it in here. You know, typing in quotation something class. You know, writing it correctly. Name Vic, and then making sure you add in that comma. Because otherwise it's not going to read correctly. So, that's pretty much the general concept of everything. So if you guys have any more comments, questions, concerns, or want me to be a little bit more specific with something or explain something a little bit more in detail, do let me know down below in the comments. I will try to continue working a little bit more if you guys want me to. I will try to make some more video of various liberation chunks, kind of explaining how liberation works and what you can do to kind of make it your own. So just again, let me know down in the comments below. Hit that like and subscribe button so that way I know that you guys are enjoying this. And if you guys are ever interested in playing with us, I am with two communities. I run the 9th Assault Corps Star Wars community, as well as I participate with a Optre unit called the 8th Shock Troop Battalion, which is pretty much follows in line with Halo ODSTs. So if you're ever interested in that, do let me know and I can get you guys kind of situated with a recruiter and then get you going. But that's about it. I do want to really quick give a shout out to Rex 88 who kind of helped prompt me to make this video for you guys. So if again, if you have any questions, comments, or you want me to explain something, let me down below and I'll try my best to help you understand. But that's pretty much the general concept. So until then, this is Nightwolf. I'm signing off.